Hi everybody, welcome to your weekly astrological and energy report for the week of the 18th through the 24th of July. And this week will not only see us moving fully out of the retrograde shadow of Venus and Mercury, but it also puts us in the position of leaving behind Cancer season, and we move into Leo season. Let's focus on that transitional point, which is this second new moon in Cancer that we are experiencing. So it's a blue moon, so to speak. And what happens when we have two new moons in the same sign? Well, it's usually when there's some kind of necessity to focus our attention on getting the resolution from a larger karmic lesson. So Cancer is a sign of nurturing, but it's also a sign of self-protection at either end of its extreme. And this new moon in Cancer is going to be happening, I think it's Monday of next week, Monday, Tuesday, depending on where you are in the world. But what it represents in its opposition to Saturn is the recalibration of our relationship to mother and father, not in terms of necessarily archetype, but more in terms of the energy of divine masculine and divine feminine as it correlates with the idea of the mother and the father. In other words, the mother being the moon, the father being Saturn, Kronos, the god of time. So what is this recalibration exactly? It is about allowing ourselves to embody the divine masculine without the illusory teachings that have kept us small for centuries and centuries that God exists outside of ourselves, and that God is a patriarchal figure adapted against pagan tradition in order to embody essentially what's ended up being the nightmare of corporate capitalism that we exist within. I mean, that's making a giant leap, but if you really follow the path, that's essentially what it is. So as we're experiencing the Capricornian energy of the collapsing of our authority structures over the next, well, I wouldn't like to put an end date on it, but certainly expect a lot more of the types of shock and awe that we have experienced thus far this year in the remaining 6 months of this year. Less, I guess, at this point, 5.5 months. But it will continue beyond that. But this is the major influence of our time. So obviously, if we're looking at things on a macrocosmic level, we're talking about power structures and the world's perspective on patriarchal authority in a godlike, externalized manner. But on a personal level, on microcosmic level, an internal level. Of course, the same dilemma exists, but it affects us emotionally as opposed to infrastructurally. So the more we come into acceptance of the embodiment of the divine masculine and feminine within us, the less challenged we are by external imbalances. So what do we need to do in order to give ourselves permission to fully embody the traits that we have traditionally designated to the patriarchal God system in which the majority of earthbound beings are nurtured or educated, at least. Perhaps nurture is not the right word, because specifically because of the fact that it's the problematic piece of the puzzle that's missing. How do you turn that into nurturing? How do you merge the divine masculine power structure that has been so corrupted with the passive nurturing that we associate in that patriarchal system with the mother and divine feminine energies? These are self-perpetuating delusions, and this second new moon is giving us an opportunity of sorts to eradicate that from our sociocultural identity, because eventually we will re-externalize ourselves and reintegrate some form of society, and when that eventually comes, you're going to want to be on board with that. So in accepting this process, that's what happens. All of our oracle cards this week sort of have a similar color tone to them. They're very much in correlation with the moon and water. So I'm going to show you the images and then we'll get into the cards individually, but we have to the sea, we have openness, and we have crow spirit. Number 17, which adds up to an 8, which is the number of the infinity of the universe, and so I guess there's a correlation between this being a number 7 and that ending on a number 8, and the openness is the transition between the two. Let's try to make sense of that by reading from the book. Let's start with the Wisdom of the Oracle card, to the sea. I'll show you that once again. Sorry about the glare. As you can see, there's a ethereal, godlike presence in the sky. And what is this person doing? Well, they seem to be contemplating life in their mobile bathtub, and the compass is clearly showing which direction to move in. It seems like this person is very unbothered by the aloneness that they experience in the deep waters, and let's find out why. The essential meanings of the card are to be in the flow, returning to source, recognizing how pieces fit together, and a natural pattern of events. The oracle's message is that Isn't it wonderful when you feel yourself in the flow of life, when events and conditions seem to engage you in a way that is fluid and effortless? This card reminds you that going with the flow is exactly what you need to do right now. Ride the wave of opportunity formed by perfect conditions. Allow trust and faith to guide you forward as you flow like a river into the sea of life. There are points in a relationship when you have to decide to go with the flow rather than dictate the course you share with another. Can you let go of all the needs you have for things to go your way and allow the relationship itself, your combined goals and desires, to steer the ship? Can you both transcend your personalities and allow the partnership to form its own identity, its own energy? Now is the time to relax and see where this mutual journey leads. Yes, it's about letting go of resistance. Of course, that is the protection message of Cancer and the crab, right? It's that you have your shell to protect you, but when you get into the flow, you know, crabs, even in their shells, like when they're protecting themselves, they allow the ebb and flow of the ocean to carry them to where they need to go. So let go of resistance. Such a huge lesson to learn, and one that we've been hammering the nail over and over again, right? To overcome this deep resistance that exists within us as a result of programming, trauma, egoic need, okay, openness, which is, of course, the opposite of resistance, right? I love it when the cards just tell their story naturally. I couldn't see the correlation between the flow of To the Sea and Crow Spirit, but now openness makes sense, right? Putting it in that context. The cycles of the moon affect every aspect of our life. The cyclical magnetic pull regulates the tides as if it acts on our planet's waters. The moon even affects the monthly cycle of women. Not just women, men too. They won't tell you that, but it's the truth. It's not an accident that a woman's cycle and the cycle of the moon are approximately the same amount of time. In native cultures, when women lived in nature, it was not uncommon for them to menstruate during the new moon and ovulate around the full moon. It was believed that menstruation was the time that a woman had to be still, put her everyday labors aside, and renew. For all people, the dark of the moon was a time to incubate ideas, watch nocturnal dreams for signs, and be still. In modern life, we as a culture don't honor these natural cycles enough. And as a result, our lives are usually bereft of this important time of rejuvenation. When you receive this card, be open to receiving signs. Be still, do nothing, be open, breathe, relax completely and thoroughly. Incubate your dreams for the future. If you are trying to make a decision, take the time to watch for signs and listen to the whispers of the universe. Watch your dreams for messages regarding the situation. Become the sacred watcher. Observe life as it unfolds, rather than becoming engaged in it. Be open to what the universe has in store for you. Be receptive to messages from your soul. This card can also be the bringer of sacred wonders into your life. Miracles can show up in ways you didn't expect. So definitely a strong emphasis on being open to the flow, coming out of our little crab shell in preparation for Leo season, when we get to shine and be crazy and full of life and fully engaged in externalization of what we truly represent. Where was I? Oh, Crow Spirit. Crow Spirit. Caw-caw, caw-caw. Co-create with spirit. I love crows, but this one, honestly, looks a little ratty. No offense, Crow Spirit, but I've seen you looking shinier than that. Co-create with spirit. The oracle message. Where are we? Sorry. As you look around you, can you sense the magic that pulses through the world? Have you witnessed how every thought can become a thing? How every intention can call the universe into action as the sacred laws shape what you experience? The universe works in perfect order. When you align your thoughts, feelings, and beliefs with spirit, you will want to crow with delight, feeling the excitement and wonder of being in harmony with something much larger than yourself. Crow Spirit says you are right on target now to see your dreams magically come into being in the visible world. The laws of abundance, compensation, frequency, and praise are operating in your favor now. Remember to be grateful and praise what is yours, even if it is still coalescing into form, still residing in the invisible realms of co-creation. No matter what area of your life you're concerned with now, what you hope for is on its way, for Spirit is your co-creation partner. And if you've been struggling with understanding that there's magic in the ether, despite all of the hideous, chaotic power grab, nightmare that exists around us outside, here's your protection message from Crow Spirit. Crow Spirit wants you to know, oh no, Crow Spirit doesn't want you to know. Crow Spirit wants to know why you think there is no magic in the world. Or do you believe that there once was, but it ran out, leaving nothing but ordinariness? Interesting, because I think a lot of people right now in this second wave of lockdowns are feeling the true test of spirit. We'll get into that after. Although conditions have been becoming challenging, you have no reason to believe that everything you've set an intention for will elude you. Right now, the outer world is shifting. Can you feel it? Maybe you are fretting about experiences, the results of some of your poor choices or judgment from the past could bring about. Crow Spirit is here to remind you that you can always course correct and get back on track. Maybe you've been hit by a loss or disappointment as a result of an event that had absolutely nothing to do with your manifesting, yet it has shaken you to the core. Crow Spirit asks you to trust that no matter the temporary conditions, things will right themselves very soon. The law of balance makes it inevitable that this too shall pass. And listen, I'm going to be a little bit of a contrarian here in terms of accepting that protection message from Crow Spirit, because what I'm going to say is, everything that you experience is divinely planned. So there is no point in resisting. And if you do resist, it's part of the plan, right? You know, the idea that, you know, 3 of 1's energy of being, you know, sort of stuck waiting for our ships to come in, that is essentially, it's a card of resistance within itself, right? Because you're not actually in the flow of acceptance of things as they are. What you do have the power to change is how you accept the things as they are. You can accept them on the surface while feeling an enormous amount of resentment, restriction, and resistance within, or you can fully embrace the notion of external acceptance and inner acceptance, and understand that you have control of the rudder and that you actually can decide that even if somebody's a monumental pain in the ass, you don't have to focus on those things that cause you to feel that way about that person, right? Or that situation. And the stillness that we're experiencing in many ways is not real stillness, right? Because we're constantly being given opportunities to rearrange our thought patterns in order to make things less resistant in our life, so that we can be open to all of the insane chaos that is on the horizon for all of us, and to experience that as an adventure and an evolutionary path towards more enlightenment, being a better version of ourselves in order to fully manifest from this body that we've been given in this lifetime, and to discover and teach. Discover and teach. Resistance kills off the value of both of those things. So this week we have our nine card spread with the Rider-Waite deck, clarified with cards from the Botticelli Tarot. We start with our 3 cards from the past. We have we start with the Page of Swords. So that is us fundamentally coming into an understanding of post-rebirth, what our intellectual and philosophical path has become. The newness of the cycle, karmic cycle, starts here. With an idea, but also with an understanding of apprenticeship, of understanding our place in our journey. And it was clarified by number 1 in the tarot deck, the magician. And what is the number 1? It follows 0. The starting point is the Fool. So the magician is the discovery of the tools that we have at our disposal in order to manifest. And what does the magician definitely not do? Resist. We then move into, as I just mentioned before, the 3 of Wands energy. So that's been putting us in a place, we've received that indication of our philosophy and where we want to go with our lives, but then we found ourselves in the position where we had to take a giant pause and wait. What was the purpose of this giant pause? There's never stillness without purpose. That's why boredom is a false concept, because boredom within itself is a preoccupation with not being able to provide direction to ourselves. Basically, mostly because you're in 4 of Cups energy, which is, it comes later in our reading, don't worry, we'll get to that, but here it is for your visual, just to remind you. That's boredom. But boredom is a choice, and it's a choice to stay in the internal realm rather than taking the opportunities that are on offer in the outside world. But we'll get into the reasons for that later, because that's actually in our future. So the 3 of Wands is a much more potent version of that, because this person has a knowingness. They're holding space for opportunity, not resisting it. And it was clarified by the King of Cups. So the King of Cups, as a clarifier for the 3 of Wands, is really telling us that that stillness that we've had, as the opportunity for stillness that we've had, is in order for us to gain this type of knowingness, wisdom, emotionally. A lot of that is about moving beyond triggers, moving beyond restriction, moving beyond projection, moving beyond the sheer desire even to be defined by other people's drama, their own inability to move beyond resistance, because resistance is contagious. So in coming into that embodiment of emotional authority, we came into opportunity. And what is that opportunity? Well, whatever this Page of Pentacles has received in their environment, because it's the tangible the Pentacles. The opportunity was given to us via this Queen of Swords. And I am taking the Queen of Swords to be an external energy in this case. Like, you are the Page of Pentacles, and you received this opportunity for growth in your environmental identity contracts through the energy of this Queen of Swords, who is in this case represented by a stubborn female energy. This is somebody else who hasn't done the work on themselves, projecting onto you things that you have allowed subsequently to affect you and to break your energetic flow. And while the Queen of Swords in her elevated state is somebody who owns her truth and therefore holds authority through her truth and her intellect. This, in this particular case, is the lower embodiment of the Queen of Swords energies, which is a defensiveness. It's the idea that we have to cut other people down in order to make ourselves feel like we can survive. So if you've been on the receiving end of a kind of energy from other people, what the Page of Pentacles as an opportunity is telling us is that this person has allowed us to see how much of that dynamic actually comes from within. It's our own. We have, we resist things that are good for us, but we're very often complicit with things that are bad for us until we learn the lesson, in order to jump forward, to take a leap of faith, to move beyond allowing ourselves to be restricted by loyalty contracts that don't serve us and that keep us engulfed in other people's low frequency energies. This in our present then flips and then turns into the embodiment of the Knight of Swords in us. We become this energy. This is where, as a result of being, for lack of a better term, fucked over or bitch slapped by somebody, probably that Queen of Swords. Just before I go any further with that, this can be you too. This can be an internal part of yourself, that you've been grappling with and that you found yourself struggling to overcome. Just to put that in context, so you can go back and think about that if you have not been out of alignment with anybody in your environment. Anyway, so that resolution through that Page of Pentacles opportunity, pushes us into this energy now in the present, which is being a warrior that is a warrior. Why can I not make the distinction between the two? A warrior as in warrior, Sorry, I completely went off on a tangent in my brain just now. I have no idea why, but anyway. You're fired up, basically. You've understood something, and now you're determined to take that lesson and turn it into your driving force in order to move you forward on your journey. And it was clarified by the Five of Swords, because the problem, of course, with this is that, you know, when we get into this energy, it's very, very important that we steer clear of the egoic battle that can entail. You know, when we get a fire under our butts, very often we have a tendency to lash out, especially when we, you know, get into lower frequency tactics such as vengefulness and wanting to take karma into our own hands. Doesn't work. And the good news is that actually we had two clarifiers on the Knight of Swords, and this was actually on the left side, so it's what we're leaving behind coming into this energy. And what we move into instead is the Six of Cups energy. So to understand what the Knight of Swords energy is when it's in correlation with the Six of Cups, the Six of Cups, of course, being the card of enticement into becoming one with our inner child, being able to fulfill that infinity loop of the roles that exist within us, not just of divine masculine and divine feminine, but within our own hierarchical structure of being the adult parent, and also the inner child, which is also a driving biological and spiritual force within us. You know, youth is an energy force. It's not just, you know, we live in a very narcissistic, vain society that forces the idea of youth upon us based upon the idea of how many wrinkles you have, or, you know, like whether or not you can still do cartwheels. But you know, it's much deeper than that. It's an energy force within. And the more imbalance you are between your ability to self-parent and also embody the inner child, the more flow there is, the more temperance there is. All of our oracle cards this week, you know, this is what they really come down to. This was our central card in our entire reading, so it does speak to how all of these things interact with each other. Temperance is that ability to find flow and balance within and without. So we've seen this in recent weeks, the struggle to move beyond the egoic need for, you know, revenge, justice, like feeling validated, even to our detriment sometimes, or our isolation, alienation. So the flow comes as a result of tapping back into this new moon energy of, I guess, if you think about like the ability to self-nurture, self-parent, to give space to our inner child, the only way that that can come about is if we are in flow with our inner divine masculine and our inner divine feminine, therefore that we're able to be both father and mother to ourselves and subsequently to others in our lives. And that then pours into our endeavors, our creations, everything, you know. So that's what this entire energy flow of this week ahead is about. I think we're starting to piecemeal these things together. That's what readings are supposed to do, not tell you if you're going to stub your toe or find a boyfriend. Next, when we're in that temperance, we become enlightened enough to come back to this same energy that keeps coming up. We're being forced to understand this and embody it fully. The Lovers, the idea of the divine choice, the idea that choice does not truly exist when you are enlightened, because of the fact that you will naturally gravitate towards what is good for your spiritual health. So from that perspective, you live unchained, you live free from resistance because you are in flow, and therefore you naturally gravitate towards the choices, the options that resonate with your higher self. And when you are in flow on that level, what you do for yourself that benefits you, in turn benefits the world around you. But the challenge in this, because the Lovers still is a card of duality, of masculine and feminine, and balancing these energies in order to be in divine flow, we have on our, negative ionic side, let's say, the Four of Cups energy. And on the positive side, we have the Ace of Wands. So this is telling us that the dilemma of that acceptance of letting go of resistance and being in flow to feel that the choices we make are divinely intended and serve to enlighten the path ahead of us so that we continue growing and moving forward. We have to move out of this restriction, self-restriction. This is what this card is telling me this week. We are stuck in self-restriction. I think I'm going to take a clarifier after, on our next card going into the future energy. You'll see why I'm saying this without giving too much away. It's because the Four of Cups comes up in our future, so the fact that it's showing up in our present to give a conclusion to our present energy, to understand better how we move out of restriction. Let's focus for now on the positive card being the Ace of Wands, which is inspiration, but it's inspiration that comes from openness. This is a number one, this is an ace, this is a birth energy of some new sense of inspiration and drive and purpose in many ways. Difficult to really explain without having tangential information on our individual journeys, but hopefully you can find some truth in that you can adapt to your own personal life, because we move from that Lover's energy, which does kind of provide that idea of, again, it's not a real choice between the Four of Cups and the Ace of Wands. Why would you choose the Four of Cups, which is restriction, staying stuck, going with better the devil you know vibes, rather than going with the enlightened flow that all of our oracle cards told us, openness, being at flow with spirit and with our environment and Gaia. And this is, this is the enlightened choice. This is the Lover's resolution. But for some reason, we still have resistance that keeps anchoring us a little bit back in the Four of Cups energy. And a lot of that, I think, comes from an inner chaos regarding feeling small when it comes to how we interact with other people. Coming from a poverty consciousness perspective when it comes to growth. In other words, being afraid to take a risk for fear of losing the 4 pentacles that we have instead of reaching for the 6 pentacles that remain on the journey. So it's growing pains, right? That's essentially what that is. And because that's coming up in our immediate future, it was, I'm figuring that we're going to initially go through a little bit of a push and pull in order to force our way through. And the astrological energies will help us with that process. This is not something that you need to be worried about that's going to suddenly pop up in your life that you have no idea about. These are energies that are already very much a part of our journeys. We're just getting ready to face them and move beyond them. And what gets us there? Well, we got an in-between clarifier for the 4 of Cups moving into the King of Cups, and that clarifier was the Knight of Cups. Wait, is that the Knight or the... Wait. Or the Page in this deck? The Knave is... why am I having a complete... You know what? I'm pretty sure it's the Page of Cups. Regardless, the only difference really is how developed we are on that path. We're clearly going from the Page to the King energy. You know, again, this is like really coming from a place of being inspired and in flow in order to allow for experiences that continue to push us into ownership of our emotional authority. But, you know, and we had that, as you remember, in our past energy, like what we're coming out of, you know, with the 3 of Wands. So, you know, the fact that it bookends the reading is that, you know, makes for a very strong emphasis on the importance of King of Cups energy, which is that, again, without getting into male or female roles specifically, because the purpose of all of this energy is to be in flow with both, it's more the emphasis on authority versus authoritarianism, something that comes up a lot. And the reason for that is because our world is crumbling as a result of authoritarianism, or should I say our world structures rather than our, you know, it's not the world itself that's crumbling, but, you know, cups are emotions, and so that authority is governed from within. Authoritarianism would be when our emotional needs and fulfillment are dictated by power outside of ourselves. This is okay. So this is okay. Now I understand. So we are going to be overcoming this 4 of Cups energy, but in order to overcome it, we have to jump from this sort of baby embodiment of emotional I want to say flow again, but that, I guess that's what the reason why is because that is really what the entire reading is about being in flow. And I think a lot of that is because we haven't really been in flow for the last 6 weeks, I'd say. There have been a lot of gnarly challenges to our flow, right? Energetically. And great, we're moving out of that, but we have to be our own authority on moving out of that. You know, it's like put on your big boy pants, right? Or your big girl pants, or your whatever else you feel like adapting to your image of you growing from a page into a king. But it is an emotional authority over the self. It's in many ways, you know, while we have to move out of resistance, you know, sometimes moving out of resistance can feel like the restriction of authority, because we have to temper ourselves. But the reality is that when we're in authority over ourselves emotionally, that is freedom, because we have to know our limits in order to evolve beyond them. You know, it's nobody else is going to give you permission to step up. In fact, very much to the contrary, most people will go out of their way subconsciously, not consciously. Not everyone's a pathological moron, but most people will subconsciously keep you in what is familiar to them. And only a King of Cups really has the ability to rise above that and be able to say, no, I know what is true to my heart, and I know what serves my greater purpose, and I know what is for the embetterment of myself and others through my work. That is to say, you know, it's not about imposing restrictions on other people. It's about embodying the fullness of our potential so that we set the example, and we are a healthy leading authority. Most authoritarians, I would say, probably are very much King of Cups in reverse, because they are very much caught in their own need to feel power in order to compensate for the enormous sense of lack that they actually have on the inside. Okay, so that flow all makes sense now, and our outcome doubly confirms this, because you can't really get better than having the sun clarified by the sun. And on top of that, right on the precipice of us moving into Leo season, which is ruled by the sun. There's not really anything to say on the sun energy, because well, essentially it's the crowning energy of the deck in terms of life force energy. You know, we eventually move into the world, which is the ending, but that's the ending of a karmic cycle, whereas the sun is us embodying the life force in the new karmic cycle. That's us reaching the fullness of our potential within that new growth cycle, right? So I'm not going to clarify any further, actually, now that I've seen how these are flowing together and how important the idea of flow is for the next week to 10 days. So be mindful of that. Remind yourself when you feel out of flow that you hold that authority within to move from being a little baby knave of chalices to a full-on King of Cups. And then let the sun shine upon your beautiful, bright, vibrant soul. I love you. I wish you a fantastic week ahead. Stay safe, stay peaceful, and bask in delight. Namaste.